Senator Martha McSally is speaking about her shocking revelation. She was sexually assaulted during her time in the Air Force. The Arizona senator disclosed she was raped by a superior officer while serving for the military during a subcommittee hearing on military assaults earlier this week.
Several senators have since responded to McSally's remarks, including Democratic Senator and possible 2020 presidential candidate Kirsten Gillibrand and Republican Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina.
High levels of retaliation. The things haven't changed. All the things we put in place to make incremental changes isn't enough. You need to transform the system.
A lot of this is going to have to come from within the military.
We made progress, but nowhere near enough.
In terms of Martha, what she did, I think, is going to accelerate solutions.
So joining us now from Capitol Hill reporter for Stars and Stripes, Claudia Grisales. Thank you so much for joining us, Claudia. So
Thank you for having me.
We heard some of the senators there responding, and, you know, the words are nice, but can we actually expect, do you think, to see senators push for reform within the military?
I think what we've seen over the last few years of focus on the Hill on this issue is that it's an uphill battle, and it's going to take work to find the right approaches to handle this looming concern. As we saw with Senator McSally, even a woman in the position who is breaking glass ceilings in the military says she was a victim. So it's disheartening, but I think these stories, these accounts, are helping focus the attention of these lawmakers and hopefully leaders in the military to make some significant changes. So the potential is still there.
You know, here's what I wonder, Claudia. I'm working on a piece of female Marines in combat arms units, right? The United States Marine Corps was the very last branch of the military to remove the combat exclusion rule. And now you have young women serving in positions that were typically closed off to them. And in every interview that I've done, these are active duty Marines, right? Every interview that I've done, when I ask the question about sexual assault, about working in close quarters with men in certain situations, high pressure situations that they might find themselves in, obviously all of them say, no problems. They treat me like a Marine. I treat them like Marines. There's no separation between what I do and what they do, and they treat me as such. So I wonder if we still have these incidences of women facing sexual assault in the military. Are we only to expect that we will learn of them once they leave the military, or if they do make these cases or these allegations against individuals, that they won't be believed?
I do think that we're seeing more service women come forward with their claims. That was one concern as they started focusing, as lawmakers and military leaders started focusing on this, was are victims in a position where they feel comfortable to come forward. And I think increasingly we are seeing a shift there. The military has seen a record number of sexual assault allegations from service women who seek law enforcement investigations in recent years. So that in and of itself is a good sign. The next stage of that struggle is, where are the prosecution levels? Those don't seem to be keeping pace, as well as the annual rate of sexual assault of service women from 2010 to 2016 appears to be virtually unchanged. So we think more of these victims are coming forward in the military, but it's the next steps. It's how these concerns are handled that are becoming a greater concern today. I
just have one quick follow-up on that. Could it be that in, for example, Martha McSally's case, she was such a high-profile service member, the first female combat pilot. And the women that I were interviewing were the first women in field artillery, in combat arms. Could it be that it's much harder if you are a high-profile individual within the military to come out with an allegation as it might be for somebody who's perhaps not on the radar of the media?
I think that that is a possibility. There can be a sense of pressure that if I'm going to make it to these higher ranks as a woman, there are certain issues I'm not allowed to talk about. And now that we're in the midst of this Me Too movement, more of these women are stepping forward. They are speaking out. So it's possible that those pressures existed at that time. when she had her experience, but perhaps now we could see more women at these higher ranks, more comfortable in different types of positions in the military, feel more comfortable to come out and make their claims.
So can we talk about sort of the concrete changes that, or at least some lawmakers are trying to implement? We've got a couple of sexual assault bills that address sexual assault within the military, both Gillibrand and McCaskill, but they take different approaches when it comes to addressing this issue. Can you talk about the difference and whether this is an indication of, why it may be difficult to get a handle on this problem?
Yeah, that has been a challenge in terms of the different struggles. In that hearing alone that day with Senator McSally sitting on this Senate Armed Services subpanel committee, when she told her story, at the end she said, I still think commanders should be involved in the process. And she was speaking to a panel of advocates and victims. And the first advocate of these sexual assault victims in the military said that he doesn't quite agree with that approach in terms of commanders being involved. And Gillibrand also has raised concerns about commanders. She said that day that they have failed their duty. And so it's raised questions about who actually should handle these cases.
Whether they should be dealt with sort of as civilian cases, as you would if you were sexually assaulted when you were sort of at a bar someplace, it would be a crime and you would go to court versus within the military.
Exactly. It is a much different process. It is a bit of a maze. You have to decide in a situation where you're assaulted, do I want to file a restricted report where I don't go to law enforcement, I don't have an investigation completed on my assailant, or do I go the unrestricted route? And that's another that can be a perilous option, as one of the victims said in the hearing that day. In her case, she went from restricted to unrestricted for her sexual assault case, and her report was shared with her superior and her peers, and it resulted in retaliation. And it's a difficult issue, and there are so many approaches that are being considered. So yeah, that's creating some challenges for sure.
President Trump, as you know, has spoken out about victims of sexual abuse and assault. He did so during the Christine Blasey Ford hearing. I'm going to play a little bit of what he had to say about survivors coming forward.
For people to come out of the woodwork from 36 years ago and 30 years ago and never mention it, all of a sudden it happens, in my opinion, it's totally political. It is totally political.
Your reaction to the president?
It's been a difficult road for the president when it comes to allegations by women against him and other men, including folks that he knows and people he's supported, such as Justice Kavanaugh. So in terms of the perception that the president has given, it's a difficult one for victims to connect with, and in some ways they feel that he doesn't understand some of these struggles that they're dealing with and the severity and the gravity involved in these cases.
Claudia, I want to ask you about something else. Today is International Women's Day, or on Monday rather. On Monday, women in Arizona are going to be marching. They want the state to pass an Equal Rights Act. What does this mean? Can you tell us more about this act and how things would change if it would be passed?
Well, Arizona would be the 38th state to add this amendment, which could fuel a potential for it becoming a federal law for us. So it's interesting what they're looking at in Arizona. It's increasingly becoming a progressive state. It sends lawmakers to the Hill who want to shake things up, such as Senator McSally and Senator Flake, and before him, the late Senator John McCain. So it's very interesting that Arizona is considering this and the timing, but it could be very impactful. And on the heels of McSally's admission, it's just another reminder that it's something that perhaps Arizona would find to be a very strong message to send about equal rights in the country.
Yeah, it's a great point to make. Claudia, thank you so much. We appreciate it as always.
Thank you.